The world turns, and with each turn, a change. And each change makes it more complex, unpredictable, enigmatic. The world keeps turning. And from the Pellicer and Heredia practice, we anticipate everything that is going to happen. Brexit, artificial intelligence, new commercial borders, legal tech. The world keeps turning, and it commands the reliance on international lawyers who are capable of interpreting this new reality with integrity, honesty, and transparency, offering answers to so many new questions. Whatever it is, ask us. At Pellicer and Heredia, we know how.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today on the 8th of June, 2022. Today, I would like to thank you all for a very, very warm comment, because we're having a very good feedback from all you guys. I think a lot of you are learning about the law in Spain, and you're giving us feedback, and obviously help us to get to know each other before you even come to the office or we organize the video conference. So a big thank you for your feedback. And you know, we are having today 1 hour of our time to try to give you general advice. It's difficult for all of us to give you specific, because every case is different, and we will be spending probably an hour of our time for every case. But let's try to generalize. Let's try to give as much advice as possible for you to learn about the law and the taxes in Spain. Okay, today we're going to talk about the ugly subject of the income tax return as a resident or as a non-resident. And Pedro later on will be talking about the wealth tax as a resident and as a non-resident. We're having hopefully now to join Michael Davies from Almeria, and he will talk about the non-resident tax. Now, let me just, before we go, Pedro, would you like to add something else? Or
well, just thank you for the support that we are receiving. We are receiving a lot of feedback. And that warm support, we just wanted to say thank you, as Ignacio has said.
Ready?
Ready, let's go.
We're ready to go. Okay, now you will say, Ignacio, what is the income tax return? Right, let me show you here what is the form. If Paco could tell me that you guys could see it properly. This is the 100 form, which is a format that the Spanish authority allow us to fill in the form to put all the correct numbers. Okay, and Paco, is that correct? Are you able to see? Right. Okay, you will see you'll have, this has 1, 2, 3, 4, depends on how complex is your tax return. Okay, now let me just summarize now with you, because I will be grateful if you could tell me where are you contacting us from. From what country? I think Juan Fran could send you the question, where are you contacting us from? Because there are dual taxation treaties in Spain with every different country. Okay, in general, in general terms, there are similar treaties, but there are very specific articles. It's not the same for United States, probably Canada, probably United Kingdom, etc., etc. Right? Now, you will say, Ignacio, what is that about income tax return? And let me just only take 10 minutes of your time here to explain to you. If you are resident in Spain, first question, let's put it again. If you live more than 183 days in a calendar year in Spain, January to December, you are supposed to lodge your income tax return in Spain if you qualify. Okay, we'll just give you some tips of advice about the article so you could read all throughout La Renta in Spain, or in our website you could download, if you see what we do, La Renta 720, wealth tax, non-resident tax, you could download that and see the specific percentages, etc., etc. So now we have the case of John and Mary, who came here and said, Ignacio, we did get our TIE. I'm more than 183 days in Spain, and I need to submit my income tax return. Now, first question, where are you from? Are you from the UK, from Canada, from the United States? because that really will make a difference. Each country has a specific protocol, but let's try to be generic, okay? Let's try to think that you are contacting us from your home country, let's say, for example, UK, and you have your TIE, obviously more than 6 months in Spain. You have done already from January to March the 720, which means declaring over 50,000 euros, assets for 50,000 euros in Spain. Bank accounts, property, shares, dividends, assets in general. Right, now we are in April till the end of June. End of June is 30th of June. So we don't have much time now to finalize the income tax return. And John and Mary will come and say, okay, I'm a foreigner, I'm Spanish resident now, but I need to submit my tax. So first thing I will say, we need to do Modelo 100 or the income tax return. Right. Remember, 183 days. Let's say now 2021, right? So for those who are in this time, you'll have to submit it. Now, questions. I need to have your name, your address. Very important thing. Be specific when you do your income tax return. What is your address for tax purposes? Very important. Even though if you have a PO box or buzon, important, because tax office will try to send you letters. Hopefully not too many, but you may receive some letters, and you need to pick them up in order to defend yourself about the case. Okay, important thing. Second thing, you will tell your advisor how much, and we normally provide the forms. So I will ask you, John, Mary, how much is your income and all the specific titles of your income? For example, I have a UK state pension. I have a private pension. I have an investment ISA, right? And I have a civil service pension, right? So you'll have 1, 2, 3, and 4. And on top of that, to make it a bit easier, I have a property in the UK, which I rented out. So I will be asking John, you need to give me in the form all your income, gross income, and the expenses, right? Very detailed. We'll send you the forms to make it easy, but I need the gross income, expenses, and whatever tax you paid abroad. Very important. What tax have you paid abroad? Do you pay in the UK for property? Now, on top of that, there is another extra form, which is the FG9 form on if you ring the overseas department, in case of British specifically, that you could claim under this. So you will need to fill in a form in English, we do the Spanish, send it off to the UK with a fiscal certificate in Spain to say that you've been here more than 183 days, which means that you will not pay in the UK, and from the 1st of January 2021, they will give you all this money because you first arrived here probably in, let's say, March. So from January to December, they will give you back your money. That money, you will need it to pay here in Spain, okay? And use the dual taxation treaty. Now, what about if you were American? Because American is not the same case. We could have very similar, right? But they've got different products, issues for you to remember. Social Security. It is important we do this planning ahead. So I always say, when you come to the office, obviously you bring all this information so we can have a clear picture of yourself, plus give us a draft. If you're American, please do give us a draft, because that will really specifically from your attorney in the US, give us a specific treatment that in the States they're going to give, for example, Social Security for example, losses on investments, etc., etc. So it gives us a wide and extensive picture about it. Right. Then what happened if you were Canadian? Canadian, they tax over there as a non-resident, and you could deduct it here. So you will lodge it all here, minus the tax as a non-resident that you paid. So you should never pay double. Okay, that's the reason of the dual taxation treaty. Now, once you provide me all this information, for example, civil service pension, you will not be taxed here in Spain, you will be taxed outside of Spain. But that figure, whatever money you receive, will be taken into consideration to work out the marginal rate. How much would it be the marginal rate? I don't know. It depends on the sliding scale that you could see in the website. Okay, it goes from 15% to 48%, but it's a sliding scale. Now, important things. If your only income is pension, nothing else, just one income, and you don't receive more than 14,000 euros, you're not obliged to submit it. But probably you might be interested to do it because it proves as an evidence that you've been living in Spain, you're up to date with the tax system, and you have nothing to hide but showing that you have zero to pay. But that's an optional thing. Now, going back to here, important things to know. So, as I said, if you were American, Social Security, you will need to deduct it here in Spain, and the treaty allows you to deduct the Social Security payment. But as I said, I always recommend you to bring draft income tax returns so we could start starting here and ask for an extension. I think it will be very good to ask for an extension because it gives you time to do it in Spain as your residency country, and then later on finalize it over there, and your attorney abroad will use a dual taxation treaty. That's particular with the US. With the UK, there is the FD9 form, which some of you already probably did already, and that is a document that allows you to get your money back and pay everything here in Spain. So you'll have UK state pension, private pension, ISA. Some of you are having private pension from the States and state pension in the UK because you've got both nationalities as well. Right, important, property. Property is very well treated in Spain. It is taxed only from 40% of the net, which means income minus expenses. From that net figure is only the 40% taxable in Spain. Okay, so it's very well treated. The 60% is tax-free. Okay, a lot of people do not know this, and it is important because I consider that investment that you made and you had abroad, not necessarily you need to sell it because it's very good tax efficient. A different thing will be about capital gain tax, because let's say that property is property number one and property number two, you sold it. So what I need from you to provide is, and this is going to be working for you as if you had investments. What I need you to prepare is purchase deed, the date and the value. So 10th of October, 20, let's say you bought it 10 and you sold it now, 8th of January, 2021. You sold in 2021, you declare it here. I need purchase value, and then I need the selling value. I'm talking about investment that you didn't use, all the allowances that you could have had as reinvesting. For example, if you're over 65, you could reinvest it here if it was your main property, tax-free. If you sell it abroad and you, within the 2 years, reinvest it in Spain, that will be tax-free as long as you invest the whole amount of your main property. So there is a lot of bits and pieces that you could learn, okay? There is a lot of information, but I'm trying to give you just a wide spectrum of what to expect. So you have investment, property, you sold the property, and then just bear in mind, this is value and selling for a house. But exactly, I need exactly the same if you sold your 100,000 bond that you have with Prudential, for example. You invested and the capital was 80 and you're selling for 100. So all that 20,000 euros, you'll have to declare it. In particular, with that company, that provider, there are tax compliant bonds. So some bonds are Spanish compliant bonds. Some of them are not. Okay. So you need to understand these things. But always remember, when you sell an investment, try to bring purchase value, the date, selling value, the date. And if by any reason you pay taxes abroad, let us know as well. Okay, you will end up having all these information, sold, investments, right? And what else could I tell you? I will need you to give me a bank account so the tax office in Spain will organize the direct debit. You could pay the tax for 60% now on the 30th of June, 40% on the 1st of November. Okay, you could pay it all in one go as well. Direct debit all through your bank. We will print it out this form and you will take it to the bank and do the payment. Okay. Now, I said about the investments, I said about the money, and basically you will have all this information ready to go. Very important if you're using dual taxation treaties to be very clear, and it's important to understand your situation. Some of your cases are very complex and we don't only need an hour, probably we need 2, 3 or 4 hours. That's why sometimes it's difficult to really confirm how much time I'm going to spend on working on that. But you could save a lot of time and money if you have all these things prepared. Now, what else would I say about the income tax return? Remember, every year, April to June, and unless I'm missing anything, Pedro, that's basically how it works out, this form of the income tax return. There is possibilities for you to do donations, and some of the companies that accept the donation, they will give you allowances. You've got allowances depending on your age. You've got allowances depending whether you're over 65, below 65, whether you're doing a joint declaration with the allowance of your husband or wife. And every situation could be different, and it all depends on income from each individual. Do you have children? Are there minors, etc., etc.? Do you have a mortgage from old days, and do you register that mortgage? There is a lot of bits and pieces that you could learn about it. Okay, let's try to take the most of it to make things properly and save time, money, and stress, because I tell you, this is quite exhausting for a lot of clients, and the better you have it, the better for you. Right, I'm going to pass over to Pedro, because on the same residence, they're going to have an impact on the wealth, but only with the specific. So I'll pass it to my friend and partner, Pedro, and see whether he can walk today or he cannot.
Okay, well, I have yesterday a gym session, so my legs are not very appropriate, but I'll try to do my best. Okay, well, thank you, Ignacio. Obviously,
shall we turn around, Pedro? Shall we turn around?
Yeah.
Let's do the other way around. And that's faster.
Obviously, there is something that is important to regarding tax issues.
This way?
Okay, we always try to write like a line between the 1st of January to 31st of December. Why do we do that? Because a tax year starts on the 1st of January and ends on the 31st of December. So whenever, as has been explained, whenever you live in Spain more than 183 days, this is a general rule, then you are tax resident in Spain. Okay, so we always explain, I think the same, if you become like a resident in the second semester of the year, it is a presumption that you are going to stay less than 183 days in Spain, so that will not be a tax year as a resident in Spain. So following to that, in case that you are, for example, in 2021, let's say that, and let's focus on last year. Last year was 2021, and you spend more than 183 days because you become resident in the first semester, or maybe you became resident in 2020 at the second semester, for example. So in 2021, you were tax resident. Let's focus on that. First thing you need to do, obviously, is the Modelo 720, which we are not going to explain it today, but if in case that you become resident and you have assets abroad over 50,000 euros, then you need to declare that in Spain. There is the income tax declaration, which is in between April and the 30th of June. It needs to be declared your worldwide income in Spain, in this case, from the period of 1st of January to 31st of December. And at the same time, you need to declare what we call it in English, wealth tax. In Spanish is impuesto de patrimonio, IP. So wealth tax that you will have to declare in case there are some, you fulfill some requirements regarding the place that you live in Spain as a resident and the assets that you own worldwide. Okay, so wealth tax is what I'm going to speak and to explain briefly in a way that can be understood. Well, first thing, wealth tax also covers for non-residents. Let me include here a word non-resident. So non-residents, how can they be taxed in Spain for a wealth tax? Well, it is just for the assets that are in Spain, not in the rest of the world. Someone, for example, has own a property in Spain, will be maybe taxed in Spain for the wealth tax in case that the value of whatever is owned by that individual person, let's remind that wealth tax is individually, each person needs to have a property bought with the price of buying the property will be more than 700,000 euros. Well, everything what is over that will be taxed with some small percentage, start from 0.30 something, depends on, it's at a scale that goes from 0.32 to maybe 285, or depends on the community what it is. In Valencia community, for example, goes up to 3.50 whenever the assets are more than 10 million euros in this case. So for non-residents, it's 700,000 euros, the minimum exempt. So whatever is lower than 700,000 euros asset in Spain will not be taxed at all. Okay, just for the assets in Spain. But what happens when you are resident in Spain? Well, when you are resident in Spain, you need to declare your worldwide assets. And then we have different regions in Spain, as you may know. There are different communities, and those communities has different rules on that situations. The one we are based, Ignacio and myself, and the one we mainly work is Comunidad Valenciana, where the wealth tax needs to be paid. There is some regions in Spain that do not have to, and obviously that as a tax haven, I would say that is Madrid region, Madrid in the center of Spain, the one who has the best attractive tax rules in Spain for this kind of taxes. But when someone is resident, for example, in Valencia, in Alicante, or in the Costa Blanca, a wealth tax is something that needs to be checked, just to check and plan before become resident or once you become resident, just something that you need to do while you are resident. So I'm going to say what are the most important things. You have an allowance of 300,000 euros for property, which means that if someone owns a property of 300,000 euros and is your permanent home as a resident, will not count as an asset. Okay, let's put an example. A couple that owns a property of 500,000 euros and a couple or marriage, and is the permanent home, so 500,000 euros as value of property will be 250,000 euros each one. So that will not count and will not be part of the base of the tax to be included in the wealth tax. And the allowance in Comunidad Valenciana are 500,000 euros. So permanent home is not included. Then from there, you have an allowance that over 500,000 euros will start to be taxed on the wealth tax. And let's put another example. Property valued 600,000 euros and value over and owned by a couple. So will be around 300,000 euros each one. As we said, we have a maximum allowance on property, 300,000 euros, so this will not count. And also has 1.5 million euros on values, assets, not just in Spain, also around the world. Obviously, it's not included the permanent home. So we'll be counting like 750,000 euros and 750,000 euros each one, where we reduce the 500,000 euros, so we'll be counting 250,000 euros each one. And according to this example, a property of 600,000 euros and savings investments of 1.5 million a couple will be taxed just at the base on the wealth tax, 250,000 euros. We will be around approximately around 800 euros to pay each one. So it's important to conduct obviously the taxes, the investment to the property, to the main property, because it has a reduction or bonification or reduction, however you want to name it, on property. But obviously you need to understand what will be the tax to do, and this is an obligation that you have to do in order to do it every year, not just the income tax declaration, also the wealth tax, in case that your assets, net assets are over 500,000 euros without counting the property. Obviously, if we have an example, a property, if it's more than 600,000 euros as a marriage, it is like 1 million euros. The other 400,000 euros, 200,000 euros each one will be counted as a base on the tax. So wealth tax is not something to be alarmed. It's not something to be worried, but it's something to take into account. Obviously, when the patrimony goes up, when the assets goes up, the percentage goes a little bit up. As I said, goes from 0.32 to 3.50, if I don't remember badly. Okay, so it's something to take into account. Things to also take into account is that it is linked in some way with the income tax. With the income tax declaration, imagine that someone has a big patrimony, big assets, but do not have an income. So the quota to be paid in the wealth tax may be able to be reduced to 80%. Would always be minimum 20% to be paid on wealth tax as a quota. And well, let's answer questions. Let's
I think Mike is already there. So hello, Michael. Can you see us? Can you hear us?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well. Thank you. Now we're going to introduce our friend Michael. Michael Davies is a lawyer with a lot of experience in Andalusia, and he's going to tell us today about non-resident tax. And if Michael wants to speak a little bit about wealth tax in Andalusia, because obviously he's got a bit of a variety in your favor, Michael. So we're going to pass it over to you to tell everyone who's non-resident what do they have to do. Over to you, Michael.
Thank you, Ignacio. I don't really think there's much more for me to say about non-resident tax. It's you've explained it to absolute perfection. You're experts in this field. Wealth tax is very similar in Andalusia to up in the Valencia region. We've also got the 700,000 euro limit. When you're a resident, you have to apply it to worldwide assets, and the first 300,000 euro your main home are exempt. And for non-residents, it's 700,000 euro. You can't count the house in Spain towards that, but you only declare assets in Spain. So I think at the moment we're exactly the same as up in the Valencia region for wealth tax. So I don't think there's anything more to explain, because I say you've explained it all so well. It's clearly what you're experts in, income tax and
non-resident tax. Non-resident tax. Could you just give a little bit of light on non-resident tax?
Oh, non-resident tax. Oh, yes. Okay. So basically, for those people that are non-residents that have purchased the property in Spain and are just going to keep the property for holidays, if they don't rent out the property, The taxes they would have would be they'd have wealth tax. If it was an Andalusia, they'd have wealth tax if the property was worth more than €700,000. And then they've got what's called the non-resident imputed income tax that they have to declare once a year. And the way that basically works is you pay 1 year in arrears, and the tax office considers that your taxable income, which of course is pretend income, is 1.1% of the catastral value of the property, which is normally a value that's quite well below the market value. And then you're taxed at 24.75% of that. So basically, normally it will be the solicitor that handle your conveyance for you. Then after he's handled your conveyance and set up your wills and set up electricity, water, rates, rubbish and community owners by direct debit, normally he'll write to you every year and tell you that you need to pay your non-resident imputed income tax. If he doesn't offer that service, just basically find someone to do it for you. It's not very complicated. It does need to be done every year.
That's good. Thank you, Michael. Michael, could you please tell us where you are based, your law firm, and your details in case they need to help you or contact you?
Okay, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael Davies. I'm a Spanish lawyer. We're specialized basically in inheritance work. Our offices are based in Andalusia. We have 3 offices in Majaca, and Majaca, which is a village up in the north of Almeria City, and in Marbella Center. We don't handle any conveyancing work outside of the Andalusia region, even though we do handle inheritance work outside of Andalusia. That would be it in a nutshell.
That's very good. Okay, Michael, if you could just drop, for those who probably are running out of time, they need to leave, if you could put on the chat your email and telephone number, just in case it is always an asset for them. Now, we're going to go into questions and answers. A lot of you are sending, and I think Pedro wants to start answering here. A lot of them, they even referring to you, Pedro. Can Pedro speak about how US traditional IRAs are handled for wealth? If you could speak Pedro, IRA and Roth Ira, because it's always a typical question we get. What about Roth? And what about
traditional IRA? I mean, the difference between traditional IRA and the Roth IRA, the traditional IRA, you got a benefit whenever you were investing on that. According to Spanish tax rules, the traditional IRA is not included in wealth tax, it's exempt. Okay, as it's different with the Roth IRA, it's something that you can withdraw, it's something that you can get as an asset, so it is included as an asset, so will be included in the wealth tax. And it's been said about which is the declaration. I think it's, I don't remember, I mean, I can't see the name, but what is the form called that they need to fill over 700,000 euros? Well, this declaration is 714. Even though it's something that you can find it easily in the Agencia Tributaria webpage in order to get this form. Okay, more questions, Ignacio.
Right, there is a good question, which is difficult to answer. Is are Valencia taxes higher than Malaga taxes? And obviously that's a good one for Michael as well, because last webinar we've been talking about income tax, non-resident, wealth, property tax, etc. And sometimes you could understand that in some scenarios are cheaper one way or the other. My answer to this question will be try to do tax planning, try to go wherever you go, or even try to do tax planning with the 2 lawyers or with the 2 scenarios, and do what is best for you. Because the problem with this advice, Pedro and Michael will agree, that today could be one way, but tomorrow, you know how the politician approach got all these taxes things, and they might remove. For example, Michael is in a very good position now with the wealth tax for residents, for the inheritance tax, Michael, that you guys are very lucky over there. And we used to be lucky as well, but not anymore. And Murcia is in the same position as well. So it's a hard one to answer whether it's higher or not, because it really depends on your specific scenario, and depending on your sliding scale, we could be able to answer to that. So again, doing tax planning is always an asset.
Sorry,
right.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think in relation to this, a consultation with a lawyer is important, especially for For high net families, where the inheritance tax can be an important issue, we can't literally just say one region is better than the other, because the exemptions work in completely different ways in different scenarios. So, for example, Andalusia at the moment is the top and the best place for if the beneficiaries are going to be children or spouse, but other communities are more favourable in other scenarios. So, what I would say is, when you buy a property in Spain, consult with a lawyer about this matter, because there are certain differences between the regions, both at the moment of purchase, because transfer tax is not the same everywhere, also on the ongoing expenses regarding the non-resident imputed income tax, the wealth tax, and then where there's the biggest differences is in inheritance tax. Now, this isn't a very important issue for lots of people, but for certain type of people with high net estates, it could be an important issue. I mean, if you're 80, going to buy a property in Spain, your sort of life expectation is 5 or 6 years, and all your inheritance is going to go to your spouse. There can be a big difference for her depending on where you buy in Spain. So I would recommend that people book a consultation regarding the tax situation after they purchase the property.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Let's carry on with interesting questions. For example, Helen is asking that she doesn't have any income. Is it better to do it jointly or not? Well, obviously, definitely. But if you don't have an income, that's one of the tips that I will tell you, to do it joint with your husband. Obviously, because all your allowance you're giving to him. So that's good. Another question somebody asked here as well about social security in the States. As I said, I would prefer you to have the draft. How much would it be taxed in state? Ask for an extension always, because it gives us time to understand how much is the tax here. And the social security will be paid, could be paid, and the treaty states that could be paid in the home country. So in some cases, you could pay, we will deduct it here because the dual taxation treaty as a resident allows you to include it here and pay in the States and deduct it here. Okay. More questions, Pedro, that we have from United States, because we're having a lot about Roth Ira as well. They're just, and especially on the wealth tax and 720, they worry about the wealth.
Yeah, I mean, Roth Ira at the end is an asset that, as I said, well, the key point is really is you are able to have access and withdraw those investments easily. And it's not like a payment that you're going to receive every month or every year, for example. And so the traditional IRA is like, we call it in Spanish rules, is like a pension, a plan, a structure on pension. But the Roth IRA is an investment that you have access and you can withdraw easily. So it's something that it will be part of a wealth tax, it will be part of the Model 720, and it will be part of, obviously, in case there is any income, obviously will have to be included in the income tax declaration according to the Double Taxation Treaty. And well, I mean, obviously, about what you said, I was going to answer that. I mean, obviously, the Social Security payment that has been done in the US obviously can be deducted in Spain. Obviously, we recommend to do it, the tax return first in Spain, extend the US, and then deduct it in Spain. That's what we normally recommend. And okay, let's go through another question.
In Canada, as we mentioned, you could just do it in Canada as a non-resident, and that tax paid there will be deducted here as well. Okay.
Okay, we have another question from Michael. It says, I am a tax resident, 55 years old. Do pay tax on my NHS pension? Well, if the NHS pension is named or is included in the public pensions, then will not have to be included to be paid in Spain, and then will be exempt. But you need to firstly to understand if that NHS pension is included as a public civil servant, as a public from the government pension.
There is a web page in the government that will confirm whether it's considered to be a civil service pension or not. Sometimes you need to look into who's the paymaster. If the paymaster is Capita, then they will be considered like paying in Spain. But you could always double check with the Inland Revenue and give them a ring and say, is that considered and treated as a civil service pension? Because the treatment is different. The civil service pension, and I will give you another tip of advice, civil service pension, a person who received two pensions, one state pension and one civil service pension. if the second pension, which means the state pension, doesn't reach the 14,000 euros, you're not obliged because the civil service pension is exempted in Spain. So you will only have one taxable pension in Spain, which it will be below 14,000 euros, and therefore you don't have to lodge. Okay. Now, if you receive interest or money from income from properties or from investment, etc., then you will be obliged. But that's only for those who have one pension and a civil service pension, because civil service pension will be only taken into account for your marginal rate. So if you're having 4 pensions, like we did say over there, right, that is not going to be taxed. That pension will not be taxed here, but on the total amount, the marginal rate will be increased according to that specific percentage, and as if you are with that sort of income. Pedro, any other questions that we might be having here? Because we're inundated, to be honest.
Mohammed, thank you very much for asking us. He's saying about selling a property in the UK. It looks like it's a permanent home. It doesn't say, but let's say that is your permanent home. Obviously, if you sell it and you become resident and then you invest it, you will be able to acquire those capital gain benefits. Obviously, if you come to Spain and in the period of 2 years, from the period of time when you came to Spain and you sell the property, which is your permanent home, you will get the benefit in order to reinvest it into Spanish property where it's going to be your permanent home. So I hope this is clear, Mohammed, but I invite you to have a personal meeting, an appointment with us, and also to explain you directly about this, because it's something easy, but it's something that we need to check about dates. I mean, once you sell the property, once you become resident in Spain, and once you reinvest into Spanish property as a permanent home. And regarding trust, and it's always a question that they always someone makes, and Michael, Mohammed is asking about if selling a property, get some gain, and then invest it in a trust. What is the tax rules in Spain? Are recognized or not? Michael?
Well, we come across trusts, obviously, when we deal with inheritance, and all I can say is that they cause a lot of problems. That one of the reasons why you guys and we always recommend making a Spanish will for Spanish assets is that we're worried about big problems on the convalidation of an English will. And one of the typical examples where it's very, very problematic to convalidate an English will is when it mentions a trust. Trust creates a lot of problems in Spain. So at least with the things that we deal with, which is with inheritance, we always tell our clients to keep well away from trusts if we have to wind something up in Spain.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Right, I think we've got questions, and people get confused about residencia, which is your TIE, and the tax period. Okay. Again, I think Tamara is making the question. Tamara, one thing is getting into Spain, right? So you will come, let's say, this year, whoever comes now in June, they're going to be more than 6 months. And therefore, if you come here with their TIE, non-lucrative visa, golden visa, etc., and if you stay in a calendar year more than 183 days, you will be considered tax resident in Spain. Okay, that's important and very clear in case you need to do planning, in case you need to do taxes in another country. Okay, now, Pedro, what else do we have from here? Because we're having a lot of questions.
And Sharon is asking that is no resident from United Kingdom, and she's asking if she can file her own Modelo 210 form, or does an agent have to do it? Sometimes rent out my property and the return is very basic. Yeah, obviously at the end it says this Modelo 210, it will be able to be done by here. There is Modelo 210 in the tax forms in the Agencia Tributaria, in the tax office webpage. So it's basically, obviously you will need to do it correctly, and obviously to pay it correctly into your bank. But it's something that you can do.
We've got one here from Lynn. I know Lynn has a lot of questions. Basically about Canada, right? Now, what I would say, actually, let's talk for a minute about the possibility, Pedro, of working here. We didn't talk today about the normal visa. It's going to come. I don't know if you have any updates from the Congress when the date is coming. But I think probably next year, January, we will be approved that.
We understand it's going to be at the end of this year, but probably will be, as you say, beginning of next year. So it's going to happen at the end of this year, and maybe the effective or the starting point will be probably next year. At the beginning of next year.
Yeah, we tried to follow up. Actually, we did draw up an article about the entrepreneur law, which is what it talks about the nomad visa. And actually, Lynn was saying here whether she could work remotely. And even with a non-lucrative visa, Lynn, you could work remotely, even though in the consulate you will face up, obviously, the embassy or the consulate will tell you that you are not allowed to work in Spain. However, there is doctrine through the courts that confirm as long as you don't get any jobs from Spain, you will be allowed to work remotely for another abroad company. Okay, so that's very clear. I know people are very desperate to say the nomad visa. The nomad visa will have that on writing plus the taxation, very probably beneficial on that. Now, actually, for those who are doing relocation as well, I would recommend you to read the Beckham law as well, which is a very specific application within the first month that you are in Spain and you are working for a company from abroad. Very important because it gives you the possibility to have a flat tax rate of 24%, which if you get a high income is very, very good. Okay,
that's right. I didn't mention the wealth tax on the Beckham law, obviously something specifically, Article 93. What it says basically is that those who are according to this Beckham law are residents in Spain, but are non-resident for tax purposes for some period of years, can be included as a non-residents for wealth tax, but also can be adapted in cases more benefit to this community or region where the wealth tax is applied. So can have the rules according to non-resident for wealth tax, but can be included in can be adapted in cases benefit according to the community rules on wealth tax.
Right, we've got a question from Julie. Julie, I think she's working in the UIPO, Pedro, and obviously UIPO has a special treatment as well. Obviously, we could be talking in a different, I don't know if you want to mention something about the specific of the UIPO. She is French. She's interested, obviously, she'll be working for the UIPO. And I think they've got a specific treaty, isn't it?
It's a specific treaty. Obviously, the taxes are, I mean, there is no like submission of taxes according to the residents, normal residents in Spain. Obviously, they have some benefits on this. And we have several cases from this trademark agency named UIPO, which is based in Alicante. And
you deal with immigration as well, partly about the UIPO situations, isn't you? Right. Okay. I think I don't know if we're missing anything here. Obviously, about selling property as well. That's another thing. If you are trying to sell properties abroad, I recommend you to do it before you become fiscal resident, if that's an option. I mean, it doesn't really need, we could do planning and do it even when you're a resident here, but that allows you to deduct as a non-resident. The beauty of it is as a non-resident, you have full control of the non-resident tax here and the residency tax over there. Now, if you just jump on to Spain and come over here without even knowing anything, you could end up with surprises. And then it's a bit delicate because sometimes, for example, I know in the UK, you withdraw some money, all these pension funds, and they see it's 25% tax-free over there, but not here.
So that is important to understand. When are you going to become tax resident? So to plan before you become tax resident to do or to move into those, for example, an ISIN, to move into a Spanish structural investment fund, or in order to, and do it before. I mean, just in order to not to pay taxes and you get this 25% tax free and move it to a different structure or investment. It's important to plan, make planning on your investments before you become tax resident.
Yeah, planning is king, and at the end of the day, you take the full control of your situation and personal situation. And you've got time still to do. For example, we are still on the 8th of June, and you still have this year, in a calendar year, still to have time to plan what to do. Because for those of you who still are non-resident, if you were in 1st of January until the 1st of July, you still have the chance not to become fiscal resident for this year. For those of you who are coming, so you have a full control of your situation. You only need to do planning ahead as much time as you need. And I tell you, it will be worth it, because unfortunately we see the situations when you didn't, and we see for those of you who plan when you're abroad. And we're really happy to see the benefit, which is basically for you.
Okay,
Michael,
one question
yeah.
For Michael, I think as Clive, thank you, Clive, for asking. And it says non-resident in Spain who purchased a property in January 2022, so this year. It says, what is the date by which I will have to file a tax return? I think, Michael, if you could explain a little bit. If
they're non-residents and they start renting out the property, then obviously they have to do it every 3 months. They'd have to start making declarations. If they're not renting out the property, then their first non-resident imputed income tax return will be presented next year for this year of ownership, deducting the few days that in January that he wasn't the owner.
Exactly. Thank you, Michael.
Right. Michael, would you like to run through any questions or any hints or anything, probably even on inheritance tax? Anything here that you would like to just mention from all the hundreds of questions we have?
Yeah, well, as far as non-residents, there's a bit of good news that still we're seeing people that haven't found out or inheritance tax returns are being presented wrongly. Non-residents that are resident even in non-EU countries, for example, the UK, since the 7th of July of last year, can claim the regional exemptions for inheritance tax if they're inheriting in that region. In other words, in the old days, you could only claim the exemptions available in each region, which drastically reduces inheritance tax if you were the beneficiary was resident in that region. Then they extended that to residents in the EU inheriting in each region of Spain. And since the 7th of July of last year, that's been extended to all non-residents that resident in Spain, that are inheriting in Spain. They can claim the exemptions available in the region where they're inheriting the property. In other words, if they're a resident in Spain, they apply the exemptions available in the region where they're resident, regardless of what part of Spain they inherited. But if they're non-resident, they can always claim the exemptions available in the region where the majority of the assets they're inheriting are. This makes a tremendous difference to inheritance tax, and people need to realize, because inheritance tax in Spain is always done by self-assessment. So you can actually overpay by mistake and then find yourself trying to claim this money back, which, as people can imagine, is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
Okay, Karen is asking about the wealth tax is applicable to non-residents in Spain. Well, we already explained that, Karen, that for non-residents is apply wealth tax whenever the assets are in Spain, let's say a property, and individually personally for individual person. So it's the assets that are in Spain are over, the value is over 700,000 euros. One thing that I didn't mention is that in case, obviously, you live in those countries that the wealth tax is also applied. There are not many, a lot. There are not too many. But for example, in France, in the Netherlands, Norway, in Switzerland, and I assume in some regions of some other countries, whatever you have paid in Spain will be deducted there. Or whatever is being paid there, obviously we need to check the convention between Spain and those countries. Anything that has been paid there as non-resident in case, then will be deducted in Spain. So at the end, you will not pay double for wealth tax in those cases.
Right. Going back to the UEPO for Julie, we pretty much think that this is going to be exempt, but happy to do a consultation to see whether it applies. But yes, I think the Protocol 7 of the Treaty of the European Union allows UEPO income as exempt. Okay, but it's worth checking just in case. Now, I think we're pretty much.
Well, let's see another question for Michael. Michael, I don't know, you can read it. So someone which is resident in Spain and Andalusia but the descendants, the property inherited is outside Spain and the EU. The property, it looks like it's outside Spain, and the descendants is outside Spain, but the resident is living in Spain, in Andalusia.
Sorry, which one is that? Sorry, whereabouts is that?
The last one, Edward.
Is Edward, the very last one, he's saying, what if one is resident?
Descendant and the property inherited is outside. What is one is okay? As follows up. Okay. Well, basically, I mean, in Spain, everything is dependent on the resident, and sorry, on the beneficiary. So, if this, in other words, if you inherit a property and you are a non-resident of Spain, a non-resident of Spain only declares to the Spanish Inheritance Tax Office what is in Spain. If the beneficiary is a resident of Spain, they declare what they receive worldwide. In this case, both the descendant, the beneficiary, and the asset is outside Spain. So this would never be declared in Spain, because it seems that only the person that's going to die is actually a resident in Spain. This question is quite common, quite normal for an English person, because in England, if the person that passes away is domiciled in the UK, then you would declare the estate in the UK, even if the assets are outside of the UK and the benefit. So that's why a lot of people are asking that question. But if this in Spain, you only declare if either the asset is in Spain or if the beneficiary is in Spain.
I think you mentioned, Michael, the person who died, the descendant, the person who died, the beneficiary is in Spain. Yeah, that's I think what he's.
The beneficiary, no, resident of Spain.
Well, it has I mean, I also understood, as you understood, Michael, but it has been said by Edward, that is the beneficiaries in Spain.
It says here, one resident in Spain. So I think the person that's asking the question, who's going, they're saying, if I pass away and I'm a resident in Spain, what happens to my inheritance if both my beneficiary and the asset is outside Spain?
What we can do, Edward.
Wait a minute. It says, question, concern inheritance tax law. Region exemptions for property inherited in Spain. Okay, so they're a bit contradictory, the first paragraph with the second one. So if the question is, if a non-resident inherits a property in Spain, they're allowed to claim the exemptions available in the region where the majority of the estate in Spain is situated. So, for example, somebody in London is going to inherit from their dad in Marbella. The father passes away, the beneficiary is a non-resident, resident in London. They will have to declare the inheritance in Spain, but they will declare it exempt, because the first €1 million would be exempt. And if they inherit more than €1 million, they may pay some money, but a very small amount on the difference, because they have a 99% deduction.
Okay, right. Okay, we're running out of time now. As I said, tax planning is king. I highly recommend you to either, if you need to speak to Michael, Pedro, or myself, to organize an appointment if necessary, or with the lawyer that you normally deal with. We're here to help. We're going to carry on during the webinars. So you could click on the live TV here as well, just in case you want to watch different videos about different topics. Send us your concerns or what you would like to talk about for us to talk about. We're very happy for your support. And I'm going to pass over to Juanfran. For those who are in the States, in the UK, or you're abroad, you might just like to fly a little bit over the Spain and see the scenario, how we are. It's now we're having a great weather and we're happy, and yeah.
It's getting hot outside.
It's getting very hot actually for us, but especially wearing this kind of clothes. But
well, thank you very much.
Michael, thank you very much. We need to see you very soon. Okay, and get together.
Next one. Okay. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much. And I'll pass you over to Juanfran. Thank you.
You can't stop thinking about it. That hidden cove, just for you. That little hideaway in the mountains. Or that beautiful postcard town. Dreaming about enjoying the fresh air again. Feeling the sun on your skin. Exploring. Walking. Traveler, there is no path. Paths are made by walking. Never stop dreaming. Spain will wait.